The Duke version of Zion Williamson is back, and he's leading the Pelicans to a lot of wins. So does that mean Zion can make an all-NBA team this season? I'll give you the answer in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, a game day for the New Orleans Pelicans, but we are going to be looking at Zion Williamson and with whether or not he will make an all-NBA team this season, or even if he's in the running. And spoiler alert, he absolutely is, because I even have people, other media in the NBA, asking if I think it's wrong if they put him on their ballots and things like that. We'll break down his candidacy in today's episode. I want to look at some of the competition and what he needs to do to finish out this year to make it, because making an all-NBA team is a big deal. More on that in a second here. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team and Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, all the rest of them as well. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, where there's almost 10,000 Pelicans fans excited for the way this season is going. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, because we put out shows that often. We'll have a live show tonight after the game against the Orlando Magic as well, recapping what we saw, answering your questions. So subscribe on YouTube if you want to join that as well. Okay. Making an all-NBA team is a big deal. You know, there's 3 teams. So that's 15 players, the best, arguably, 15 players in the league. It's one of those things that shapes perception of players, influences contracts, quite literally with the Derrick Rose rule. It defines legacies. And with the way Zion has been playing, he's absolutely in the conversation. If you're in the conversation, you can make it, because there's also a new wrinkle when it comes to voting for All-NBA. Right now, and I'll give you my all-NBA teams in the second segment here, but we're going to look at Zion first. There's a new wrinkle. It's positionless. Is that a good or bad thing when it comes to Zion Williamson? I think the answer could be both. So let's look at Zion, right? Just before we get into the numbers, anything like that, right? When you watch him play, you feel the impact of him out there on the court. And when you look at these all-NBA teams, they're all impactful players that are on winning teams. You rarely see guys that are on true bad losing teams get into the all-NBA conversation. Winning matters to this sort of thing. You know, your impact, the kind of feel of the player and how they influence the game matters in this sorts of thing. Perception, right? Are you the engine for a winning team? That might take you further than pure stats. Zion has that feel to him, right? That alley-oop dunk from Najee Marshall in the win over the Brooklyn Nets was something that kind of gets people to go, oh, wait, look. His play recently over the past 10 games, the past week or so, where he's averaging over 30 points per game, was in the running for player of the week the past week. Still might get it this next week on a team that's winning their games, that is now kind of the darling of national media for the past week or so, right? Everyone's only saying good things about the Pelicans right now. That's how you kind of build that narrative case around making All-NBA. And Zion looking like Duke Zion, or a better version of Duke Zion. We could probably just call him New Orleans Zion at this point, Pelican Zion at this point, you know, is in that conversation, right? The weight loss is evident there. You know, he's been better this season as it's gone on. He's actively contributing on defense and impacting the game in a variety of different ways. And most importantly, the team is winning. It's your biggest thing right there. Win games, and that takes you pretty far in the all-NBA conversation. And again, I'll give you my teams coming up in the next segment here. When you look at it right now, in the month of March, Zion is averaging almost 25 points per game, 24.4. He's getting to the line almost 7 times, making his free throws at a better rate than he has at any point during the season, 78.2%, averaging more rebounds, 7.8 in the month of March, than he has during the regular season season, which is 5.8. The assist numbers are a little bit down in March, but they were up in February. Overall, the dude's just having an incredible season. His numbers this year are 22.7 points per game on 58% shooting. You know, he's grabbing, where the rebound number goes, 5.8 rebounds per game, 5 assists. He's getting you about a steal per game and about half a block per game. But since the All-Star break, post-All-Star, a lot of those numbers are up. He's giving you about the same amount of steals per game, but he's averaging over a block per game during this time. His field goal percentage is up. He's getting to the line about the same amount of times, but shooting it better, right? The assist numbers being up, the rebounding numbers are up. That all just contributes to a team winning. They're also giving him the ball more. You're seeing the point Zion thing work, where they're using him, as we talked about in yesterday's show, as an advantage creator. Even if the assist numbers go down, he's the focal point of the team's offense, and that's an important thing to note. You look at the best player on this team, it's Zion Williamson right now, and that's going to get you into that conversation. So the numbers and everything he's doing, with the Pelicans just being a half game back of the Los Angeles Clippers as of when I'm recording this in the standings for the 4th seed, so potentially going to lead this team to home court advantage in the first round, 42-26. Yeah, that's in the conversation for All-NBA. Now, it's worth noting, I mentioned that All-NBA can influence contracts. There's something called the Derrick Rose rule, which, depending on if it's in your contract, these Rose rule clauses, things like that, if you're a rookie, not rookie, there's impacts of that. Basically mean you can get more of the salary cap on the type of contract that you get. You can go from 25% to 30%, 30% to 35%, if you meet some of these All-NBA qualifications, things like that. Zion has already signed his contract. That needs to happen before your contract goes into effect. Zion is already on his extension. So making an All-NBA team does not mean he gets more money. It doesn't really change anything whatsoever other than, look, it's a big deal. It's a really cool honor. And yeah, he absolutely can be in that list and in the conversation of the 15 best players, particularly with the defense that we're seeing from him, right? Some of the highlight blocks we've seen, making plays that leads this team into transition opportunities. All of that is a really important thing, and people are seeing that. He just looks like a different person out there on the court. That's going to get him a lot of All-NBA votes. Speaking of All-NBA, you know, it's a competitive year. I'm going to give you my first team, second team, partial third team, because that's realistically where Zion will end up. He will not be on first team or second team. I'll give you what I have right now as of today for first and second team, and talk about where Zion can fit in and some of the players that he's going to be in competition with, because this is going to be closer than I think people realize. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver like me that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's the 2024 Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system, and the 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8 with expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. And I'm also excited to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. So whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And there's a lot of options the next couple of weeks with the tournament in full swing. Throw $5 down on a game that you feel confident about. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Again, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know. And today we are looking at Zion Williamson and if he can make an all-NBA team. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 of y'all on YouTube as well, where I will be live the moment, like 2 minutes after the game ends. The Pelicans playing the Orlando Magic. We're going to go live on the YouTube channel, break down what we saw, what we learned, hopefully a Pelicans win. And I do bonus segments on YouTube where I interact with you and answer your questions. So if you want to talk directly to me, come join on the live show after tonight's game. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Become an everydayer. Let me know in the comments down below if you're an everydayer. So Zion Williamson absolutely can make an all-NBA team. Whether he will or not, I don't know just yet. There's still 14 games to go. More on that in the next segment here on Locked On Pelicans, where we look at what Zion needs to do to be able to make it. Again, doesn't impact his contract. Doesn't fundamentally change anything, but I think it's a very cool honor. I think we would all be very excited to see Zion Williamson on an all-NBA team, but it's going to be at times tough for him, right? You know, when you look at the Pelicans and their offense with some of the star power they have, Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy can light it up, right? Herb Jones has been great. There's somewhat of an egalitarianness, I don't even think that's a word, to the offense, right? You know, there's nights when it might be Brandon Ingram taking over because he has it going and Zion taking a back seat, or a game where CJ McCollum drops 30 points, or maybe because one of the things the Pelicans tend to do to bad teams is bury them early, he doesn't need to play much in the fourth quarter, and that's going to mean some of his numbers are down. In some of these Pelicans wins, right, he has had kind of just quiet-ish games because he just didn't need to do much because they just ran out to a massive lead, and like that was that. I'm trying to find his last game, the Indiana Pacers game, right, where he had just 8 points, but they won by 27. He just didn't need to do much of anything. Or the game where they completely torched the Toronto Raptors, right? And he had just 16 points because he didn't need to play much in the fourth quarter or anything like that because the Pelicans won by 41 points. My goodness. There's moments like that. That kind of hurts his candidacy just a little bit, but you're also seeing him be the focal point of the team, right? In those 2 games, Indiana and Toronto, he had 7 and then 9 assists respectively. It's a good thing. You know, one of the things that will work against him a little bit too is he got off to a somewhat inconsistent / slow start, even if I don't think that's fully true. You know, for November, this is a guy that averaged almost 25 points per game, but that dipped a little bit in December as the Pelicans went through a little bit of a rougher stretch during some of that. And December wasn't his best month. His assist numbers were down. The rebounding numbers were about the same, but he was turning the ball over a little bit more, but he was starting to ramp up some of the defensive side of the ball things. You can see it. At times, it's been a little bit up and down to kind of this rapid ascent that he is going through right now. You know, All-NBA is a season-long award, so we can't just look at the past 5 games, the past week, only the past month. They're going to take this into account of how the Pelicans have been all season, how he's been all season. Now, the good news is they're winning. That's going to go a long way. This is a team that is not in the play-in tournament, at least not currently, and I don't think that'll probably change. They're in a very good spot, and they could have home court, and I think that can kind of override a lot of other things too. But All-NBA is going to be tough to make. You know, it is positionless this year. You could have an entire team, first, second, third of all big men if you wanted to. I don't think that's what voters are going to do. I think voters in general are going to try and keep the 2 guards, 2 front court players, wings, forwards, and 1 center on all of there. But it's also complicated a little bit too by that 65-game rule, of which Zion Williamson is on pace to qualify for. So far this year, where the numbers just go, he's played 57 games, so he needs to play 8 more out of these final 14. So barring any sort of injury, knock on wood here, he's going to be okay to kind of qualify for that. But guys like Joel Embiid aren't. Donovan Mitchell won't anymore. That opens doors for guys that would have been on All-NBA to not be there. But the position list can work and hurt you, because if there's another guard that people think is worthy over him, a guy like maybe Tyrese Halliburton might get in there over Zion Williamson. It just kind of depends sometimes with the whims of the voters a little bit. So I'm going to give you my All-NBA teams as I have them today. And honestly, this was kind of just done like back of napkin math kind of thing. I think so I might be missing someone, and I'm not a voter, so it doesn't truly matter. The first team I think is going to be near unanimous, and I don't really think there's much room to disagree with some of this. Maybe one person on this, but I think the first team, especially if voters want to kind of keep the guards, forwards, center thing still a thing, is Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic, I think is going to be your first team All-NBA. You could maybe swap Tatum out for Kawhi Leonard. I have Kawhi on my second team. But overall, I think it's those 5 guys are going to make All-NBA. Luka, Shai, and Jokic are also the 3 that I really only think are the guys that can be in the MVP conversation at this point. So Luka, Shai, Tatum, Giannis, and Jokic. Second team, I have Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, and Domantas Sabonis. I think you can maybe sub one of those guys out for third team, but in general, all 5 of those guys are absolutely, barring some weird injuries or things like that, going to be on the All-NBA team. I think Sabonis is like criminally underrated too. And then that leads us with the third team here. I have trouble believing that voters would leave out LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. Right? Like, those are big name players that are almost always on this list that should play enough games, will play enough games to qualify for it. So that's 3 of the spots right there. That leaves us 2 spots left on the third team. So there's Zion Williamson in the running for it. But what about someone like Devin Booker? You know, Suns are worse than the Pelicans, but, you know, again, you have really 2 star players on that team in Booker and Durant. He's also a big name, one of the more at times clutch players in the league, though he's struggled with that this year. But that's a guy that can usually light it up. People think of as one of the best 15 players in the league. You know, you have De'Aaron Fox, second player on that Sacramento Kings team. They're worse than the Pelicans, but he's very good. And again, the Pelicans, more egalitarian offense of having 3 star players, a 4th guy in Trey who can light it up, a solid center in Jonas Valanciunas, right? Takes away from Zion a little bit here, I think. So Fox is going to be in that running. You do have Tyrese Halliburton, who's maybe or maybe not going to hit the games played threshold. We'll see. But he's been fantastic this year, kind of the breakout star. Seems like him or Maxey might win. Tyrese Maxey might win Most Improved Player of the Year. Maxey is going to be in the conversation for an All-NBA spot, potentially too, I think. You also have another big man in Bam Adebayo. You know, he's always in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. The Miami Heat are struggling a little bit. So when you look at these guys, they have claims for... Oh, the other one that I want to mention is Victor Wembanyama. He's kind of in an interesting position. The Spurs are terrible. And he started off a little bit slowly, but when you look at what he's doing defensively, there's an argument to be made that he could win Defensive Player of the Year. Kind of what he's doing as a rookie, which makes it more impressive. He's averaging 3.5 blocks per game and 1.3 steals. He's taking over 5 3-point attempts per game. He's averaging over 20 points per game. He's getting 10.4 rebounds. Like, these numbers are absolutely incredible for the things that he does as a rookie and for just his size. Just an insane player to watch. He's going to be in there just because he's a big name player too. The team's crap, so that's going to work against him. He started off slowly, but really over the past kind of month or so, like 2 months, this guy has looked absolutely incredible and is just straight up destroying worlds, it feels like. He has games with 6 blocks, 7 blocks. That 3.5 might go up. So there's a lot of competition here, but I think the winning and Zion looking like he does and contributing both on offense and defense is something that can really give him an advantage here, because some of these guys, Fox isn't a great defender, right? Halliburton's not a good defender either. Wemby's on a bad team. Booker is Booker, but that team is struggling, and I don't know what to make of them. Same for Bam Adebayo in the Miami Heat, right? Jimmy Butler's not eligible for awards this year. That opens the spots up. Neither is Kyrie Irving. It's going to be really close. There's a lot of competition for this. So I don't know if I would put Zion on third. I would put Zion on the third team, along with LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. I'd probably put someone like Halliburton in there too, I think would be my other one, which makes that team look a little strange here, but that's positionless for you. I think that would be my third team is Halliburton and Zion on there. Leave out Booker, leave out Wemby, leave out Fox, leave out Bam Adebayo, and probably one or two other players that I'm forgetting here too. But here's the thing. Voting's not over, right? Voting hasn't even started. Season's not over. There's 14 games left to play. What does Zion need to do during that time to ensure that he makes an All-NBA team? This doesn't have to be a conversation at the end of the season. It is right now. It doesn't have to be in a couple of weeks. Let's talk about what Zion Williamson needs to do to solidify, that's the word I'm looking for, an All-NBA spot. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I want to tell you about BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp here. You know, sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing here. These allergies in New Orleans are killing me. And they need to make it easier for you to get some allergy medication, like specific ones, because it's different in the area you're in. This is way too complicated. It's annoying. We shouldn't be having itchy eyes and all of that all the time here in New Orleans with what's going on this season. So therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this team. And today we are looking at Zion Williamson and his credentials for All-NBA. We're, of course, going to be looking at playoff matchups, what the Pelicans breaking down games, what we learn, how the Pelicans can keep improving. We'll get into the offseason where the salary cap, free agency, the draft, they've got a decision to make on a Lakers pick. That'll be a whole show in and of itself in the future. We cover it all here, so subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So for your second listen here, by the way, the Locked On Saints podcast, also here for you Monday through Friday, looking at Chase Young's contract, injury protections, maybe not. It's all kind of weird. Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, is breaking down every single thing black and gold for y'all. Okay, let's keep talking about Zion Williamson making a Locked On NBA team. That would be cool. Maybe we need to do Locked On awards, a Locked On NBA team. First team, second team, third team. That sounds pretty good. I'm going to float this idea here. We got 30 people who know what they're talking about when it comes to all the teams. More than 30, actually. So what needs to happen for Zion Williamson to solidify a spot on one of the All-NBA teams? And look, it would be the third team. That's what we're looking at here if we're being realistic about it. And I don't think he necessarily is guaranteed a spot on there. I will say this. Enough people are kind of taking note of him that I wanted to do this show. As I said earlier, I've had a bunch of national media people text me and say, like, what do you think about Zion on All-NBA? Like, is that completely out of the question? Should we not be looking at this? And the answer was like, no, you should. And I think I swayed one or two people on this as well as they really started to dive into it and saw what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball and kind of this offensive engine right now for a team that has gone 16-5 in their last 21 games. That's an incredible number, right? They might have home court advantage in the first round. So what does Zion need to do the rest of the season to solidify this spot? First and foremost, do everything that you are doing, right? Right now, he's top 25 in points per game. He's top 10 in free throw attempts per game, right? When you look at the blocks, the steals, and everything he's doing, the assist numbers are good. There's very few people putting up a stat line like this. Keep at the bare minimum doing this, around 25 points per game, around 5, 6, 7 assists per game, grab around 7 to 8 to 9 rebounds per game, get a block, get a steal, and get to the line. And that's going to at least keep you in this. The production can't really dip as we hit this final stretch run of the season. Look, their schedule gets a little bit tougher with tough games like the Boston Celtics, with the Milwaukee Bucks. Those are 2 in a row, right? Like, that's not a great situation for the Pelicans here. That's going to be kind of difficult. They have, by opponent winning percentage left, the 8th toughest schedule. The Thunder can be a little bit tough too. We'll see about the Orlando Magic, 2 games left with them, and then 2 against the Phoenix Suns. I think they can beat the Suns here. You need to keep up the same level of production, because if that dips, that narrative of like, look at how good Zion is like, oh, he can't last the whole season now, right? You need to keep that up. You need to keep up the same sort of level of production and energy on the defensive side of the ball as well. Now, he needs some help from the team too with all of this, right? Those assist numbers are going to be important. They're going to try and take away Zion and what he's doing scoring at the rim, because that's what teams do. You saw the Brooklyn Nets come out and start in a zone to see if that could limit Zion, and somewhat did. He's going to need his teammates to make shots, because he will have the opportunity to pass the ball around. This is a guy who could average easily, it feels like, over 10 points per game. Very easily, it feels like, or not 10 points per game, 10 assists per game, I'm sorry. And he's going to need those numbers. If the Pelicans go a little bit cold, have a rough shooting stretch, that's going to negatively impact him. They're 5th best in terms of 3-point percentage this season, 38%. That means those guys are making their shots. Continue to do that, team, right? Feature Zion, put the ball in his hands, let him go and attack and score. And again, that's what this team is honestly doing, and it's letting them get wins. So they need to kind of still have that Zion-centric offense, and he's going to need to find ways to score. Teams will absolutely throw more bodies at him and try and take away the rim. He's going to need to find another way or two to score. This is where a slight mid-range maybe comes into play. A runner, a floater, something along those lines, which we've seen a little bit from him. His scoring has gotten like a step or two back outside of the restricted area, though not much. Having that in his bag, working on that constantly is going to be an important thing as well. You're also still going to need strong games from Brandon Ingram. This is a guy that can take over games with the mid-range. He still needs to be a little bit judicious with his shot selection, which he's been really good about recently. And that's why you're seeing this team really win, because he's playing a very excellent team-oriented style of ball that's leading the team to victories here with his passing and kind of adjusting as more of a playmaker and using some of his scoring threat to draw guys away from Zion and others on the team too, which means they can then find Zion Williamson later. So everyone maintaining this high level of play, but if the Pelicans keep winning and Zion keeps doing this, he's going to be in the running, right? We don't know if Victor Wembanyama is going to finish out playing the rest of the season. Those, if they're just losing and they shut him down just not to risk injury, that might help a guy like Zion Williamson, right? If the Phoenix Suns keep struggling, that's going to hurt Devin Booker. If the Sacramento Kings are in the play-in tournament, can you put 2 guys from a play-in tournament team into All-NBA? Halliburton, if he misses a couple of games, is going to be out of the running there too. The Miami Heat are up and down. Who knows how it impacts Bam Adebayo. Zion on this team can keep winning, and that's really going to create some distance, I think, between him and these other guys. So know what the defense is going to throw at you. Find ways to kind of counter that. And he'll be leading this team not just to wins, but also to himself getting an All-NBA spot, which doesn't impact his contract, which is a good thing for New Orleans, given the salary cap situation that they're in. But it's going to be a cool nod, a cool award, and everything like that nonetheless. So it'll be a very big deal. I can't even remember the last time we had an All-NBA guy. It would have been, I would assume, Anthony Davis in some capacity, but how long has that been since that happened here in New Orleans? So that's going to be a really cool opportunity here. Let's see, he's made 4-time All-NBA. It was probably not even his final year, I don't think. I'll have to take a look and find the awards later to try and see. But it's been a minute since we've had anyone like that, and I think that's a really big deal and something that's going to be really cool for the Pelicans, for this team, and kind of get Zion back on the right track that we've wanted to see from him, because he's playing some excellent basketball, as is the whole team, right now. But we wanted to focus on Zion Williamson winning a potentially major award because I think that's the one guy that's going to be in the running for some of these this year. So let me know what you think. Would you put Zion Williamson on your All-NBA team? Do you think he has a chance, or is there someone else you think is gonna get that over him because maybe the media just doesn't like New Orleans? Let me know what you think in the comments down below on YouTube. And don't forget, live show after the Orlando Magic game on YouTube tonight. It's going to be fun. Hopefully, we're going to be talking about a Pelicans win. So we are the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all later tonight for the live show, or tomorrow if that's when you listen. See you then.